What if I told you that the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution was not Manchester, but Calcutta? What if the thundering looms, the roaring furnaces, and the rise of mechanized empires had all begun, not in Britain, but in the temples, bazaars, and textile towns of India? What if steam powered the East before the West ever caught fire? To understand this alternate world, we need to rewind the clock to the early 1700s. At the dawn of the 18th century, India was not a backward land waiting for European enlightenment. It was one of the richest and most industrially vibrant regions on Earth. The Mughal Empire, though beginning to fragment, oversaw vast cities with complex irrigation, trade guilds, and a thriving textile industry. Bengal, in particular, was a global powerhouse, producing fine muslins and silks sought after from Cairo to Canton. The British East India Company, just one of many foreign trading firms operating on Indian soil. In 1700, India accounted for over 24% of global GDP, a staggering figure. But in our timeline, the tables turned. Britain leveraged coal, steam, and colonial control to leap into the modern era. India became a colony, drained, not developed. The tipping point lies in Bengal, circa 1757. In our timeline, the British East India Company wins the Battle of Plassey and begins a century-long economic extraction. But in this alternate timeline, the Nawab of Bengal defeats the British, aided by French military advisors and Maratha reinforcements. The East India Company is expelled. Instead of colonial conquest, India remains under fragmented but Indian-led rule. Mughals, Marathas, Sikhs, Mysoreans, all locked in rivalry. A Parsi merchant family in Bombay finances the first mechanical loom. A giant banker in Ahmedabad backs iron foundries using indigenous coke. And in 1780, in the port city of Surat, a Gujarati engineer unveils the first steam engine built entirely in India, not to drain mines, but to irrigate fields. India's industrial revolution doesn't begin with coal. It begins with water, agriculture, and textiles. By the early 1800s, textile cities like Dhaka, Benares, and Madurai transform into mechanized hubs. The British can no longer dump cheap cloth into Indian ports because Indian mills are producing better, faster, cheaper. Instead of deindustrialization, India experiences massive urbanization. Railways are built, not by the British to move troops, but by Indian entrepreneurs to move goods. Steam-powered looms, sugar mills, and rice huskers spread across the subcontinent. By 1830, Bombay rivals Manchester, not as a colony, but as a competitor. Foreign traders arrive, not as colonizers, but as clients. Industrial India is open for business. Industrialization reshapes power. The Marathas and Sikhs, rather than fading into history, become industrial dynasties. The Mughal emperor, reduced to a figurehead in our timeline, becomes a constitutional monarch over a loose Indian confederation, modeled on the Hanseatic League. By the mid-1800s, India has a middle class fluent in Persian, English, and Gujarati, universities teaching engineering and mathematics, a domestic market of 200 million consumers, and, critically, control over its own resources. The ripple effects are immediate and seismic. Britain's rise slows dramatically. Without access to Indian cotton or tax revenue, the British Industrial Revolution stalls by decades. France avoids collapse. Still active in India and with profitable trade, France does not lose as decisively in the Napoleonic Wars. Seeing a rising India, the Qing dynasty initiates reforms earlier. The Opium Wars? Maybe they never happen. By 1850, Indian cities host political salons debating federalism, representation, and citizenship. India is no longer a passive object of empire. It is the empire. By 1900, the world looks utterly different. The Indian Confederation stretches from Lahore to Madras. It's a multilingual democracy with a parliamentary system inspired by both Persian Majlis and British Commons. Calcutta, not London, becomes the global hub of finance and shipping in the Eastern Hemisphere. Indian railways cross the Himalayas into Tibet and Central Asia, opening Silk Road 2.0. But with power comes tension. India, now an industrial superpower, must navigate labor unrest in Calcutta's mills. Independence movements rise in Burma and Ceylon, while China, now a peer rival, competes for dominance. It is not a utopia, but it is Indian-led. Indian engineers are courted by American firms, Indian investors sit on the boards of Russian oil companies, and Indian-built steamships cross the Atlantic, not as cargo for colonialists, but as ambassadors of empire, because history could have been rewritten, and today, we just showed you how.